Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is yet again faced with the task of finding a balance between limited resources, money, as well as expenditure pressures that will be acceptable to partners in the Government of National Unity. The Finance Minister will try again to present what's been dubbed Budget 3.0 in Parliament tomorrow. Let's get the view now of Black Business Council CEO Kganki Matabane. Good to have you on the program as always, sir. How high are your expectations, in fact, that Godongwana will, on the third attempt, be able to present a budget that does not result in the chaos of the last 2 months?
Good evening, Tepikin. Good evening to the viewers. We really hope that we're not going to get to budget 4.0. It's not good for the country. It's not good for stability. It creates a lot of uncertainty for business. Business just want to go on with their lives. So we hope the political parties have basically agreed, because it's for the political parties in Parliament to decide and agree. And hopefully he's not going to change and bring up some of the things that we did not agree with. We did not agree completely with the VAT hike. We still think that there's a need to cut some of the fat. For example, we don't need the deputy ministers. We also need to support SARS to make it more efficient, for it to be able to deal with complicated cases like transfer pricing that is done by companies that are here and invested outside the country. So we think there are various other ways where the minister can still find the additional revenue to fill the hole that is being left by the purported increase that was not necessarily thought through. So we still hope that everything will go okay. And we are saying to the minister, the country where it is, we don't need an austerity budget. The country needs growth. The country needs jobs. You can't do that. You can achieve that by cutting too much on, for example, things that can invigorate the economy, like infrastructure. You can't cut there because we need that. We need the infrastructure to grow so that we can grow the economy. But yeah, as I said, you can also cut the other components. But we need a pro-growth budget rather than an austerity budget.
But how does then the finance minister and the team at Treasury begin to deliver a budget that is not about austerity, a budget that some say should be pro-poor, when, for example, it's very clear there's an outright rejection of an increase in taxation, especially for the poor and the working class? Is the solution perhaps in borrowing more for the country?
No, the borrowing more is not a solution for South Africa, especially because South Africa is not growing. When you are dealing with a country like South Africa that does not grow at more than 1% per year, you can't keep on borrowing, because otherwise you're going to borrow yourself into the hands of the IMFs of this world. So what needs to be done is come up with a budget that will encourage growth, so that the growth can move from less than 1% to 3-5%. And once you are at that growth, the economy itself will generate enough revenue to repay the debt. Because now we pay so much on a daily basis, we pay so much interest. If we keep on borrowing, we're going to end up borrowing ourselves into serious trouble.
And as you said, borrowing ourselves into serious trouble, I've just pulled up a figure here, an article that said South Africa pays 13,473 Rand every second in debt interest. Is this sustainable in the long term? The pressures from managing the debt and ultimately having to deliver a budget that serves the poorest among South Africans, the middle class, and right at the top at business level?
Yeah, it's not sustainable, and hence we're saying we did not support the VAT, because VAT is a once-off temporary solution. which then means that if it does not, the economy doesn't grow, next year again you must also increase the VAT, the following year you must also increase the VAT, but that negatively affects small businesses, it affects the poor. But the solution, all of us, we know the solution is to grow the economy, because when the cake grows, we are able then to get more revenue, then we'll be able to deal with the challenges that we're facing, where there's a shortage of a few billions rands because of the grants that were given to people who are very poor. So we need to find a way, how do we then deal with the grants, with the 350. Because remember, the 350 were supposed to be for COVID, but now we've extended them because we've realized that they are helping people who don't have any income at all.
Should we tax you as business more to make up what's missing?
Yeah, that may not necessarily be the solution again, because there's no economic growth. And remember, there's a maximum that you can tax people before you basically indirectly encourage them to start dodging tax. So you don't want to reach that limit. You need to tax people in such a way that they'll continue to be encouraged to pay tax. If they feel like they're over-taxed, they'll then come up with some other schemes to try and avoid and dodge tax. And that's not where you want your rich people, your businesses to focus. You need your businesses to grow. As they grow, automatically they'll pay more taxes because of the growth.
And let me ask you then, are you hearing anything as that delegation from South Africa is now in Washington preparing to meet with President Donald Trump? I know there's President Ramaphosa, 4 ministers, but some business names are also being floated about. What are you hearing from your sources?
Yeah, we were also invited to the United States, so we do have representatives there. We're just basically hoping for the best, but we hope at the end of the day, whatever we're going to come up with is not going to compromise the sovereignty of South Africa. It's very, very important that we remain independent, and hence you cannot borrow ourselves into trouble, because once you are in trouble, you can't then be able to stand on your own. You can't be independent if you are depending on these other institutions of the world, because then they'll just close the tap. So it's very, very important that we need to be sovereign, independent, but also financially must be able to sustain ourselves.
And we know that, for example, when the Trump administration was considering those tariffs of more than 20%, 30% in some instances on South African goods and products, the automotive industry, which sells cars and vehicle parts, was very worried. They said thousands of jobs would be lost. So said the citrus growers, as well as other industries in the country. Put in context the potential cost of a collapsed relationship in the United States, or with the United States, for South African business and the labor market.
Yeah, it will be a serious setback for South Africa, but it won't be like a disaster. Remember, South Africa also has other markets. So what will then be required is for those businesses that are affected to redirect their goods to other markets. But obviously, unfortunately, it does not happen overnight. There will be some pain, but in the long term, I think we'll be fine, because we don't necessarily 100% depend on the United States. But it's very important to keep a good relationship with the United States. They are our second biggest trade partner. We need them. They are big as far as the world is concerned in the bigger scheme of things. So it's very important that we must keep a cordial relationship with them, but it should not be a subservient relationship. It must be a cordial, because we are also a sovereign country as South Africa, and that should be respected.
Kganki Matabane, good to talk to you, CEO of the Black Business Council, joining us on Full View. And they'll wrap up this edition, by the way, continuing rolling coverage, in fact, coming up for you tomorrow as President Cyril Ramaphosa leads a delegation to a working visit at the White House. What will the meeting produce is the main question. Will they come back with a deal? Will the South African delegation present a deal that is acceptable to the US President Donald Trump? Stay with SABC News as we cover all the angles to this major story.